Chronic fatigue in the modern professional is rarely a psychological failing. It is a mathematical misallocation of energy. For decades, pop psychology has labeled dopamine as the brain's pleasure chemical. This is factually incorrect. Dopamine is a physiological agent. Its sole purpose is to mobilize your internal resources to meet a challenge. To understand this, you must look at the human brain as a closed thermodynamic system, operating on a strictly finite energy budget. High performers constantly overdraw on this closed system, taxing their deepest reserves because they falsely believe the resulting stimulation is a biological reward. The moment dopamine enters the system, it triggers a shift in biological priority, initiating a trade-off between current performance and future recovery. This shift creates a state of acute sympathetic arousal. To maximize cognitive output, the brain deprioritizes resource-heavy internal maintenance, momentarily diverting metabolic support away from the immune and digestive systems to fuel the prefrontal cortex. Evolution designed this reallocation as a survival mechanism, intended only for brief windows where immediate physical or cognitive effort outweighs the need for long-term repair. When this mobilization becomes perpetual, the body remains in an emergency state, leaving cellular repair functions chronically underfunded and degrading your baseline health. The sustained focus demanded by modern knowledge work exacts an unsustainable physiological cost when left unregulated. This resource mobilization is dictated by a continuous neuromathematical control loop known as reward prediction error, or RPE. The equation shown on this HUD tracks two core variables, R sub t, representing the actual reality of an outcome, and V sub t, the expected value. A positive error state occurs precisely when the actual reality over-indexes your expected value. That resulting positive calculation is the exact mechanical trigger for a dopamine release, flooding the system with a burst of mobilizing energy. However, immediately after this mobilization, the brain automatically updates your expected value, raising the threshold required for future releases. Human motivation, at its core, is the biological drive to manipulate variables to keep this RPE calculation continuously positive. Apply this mathematical equation to the modern professional environment, specifically the daily use of generative AI and algorithmic feeds. These digital ecosystems are explicitly engineered to artificially sustain positive RPE calculations by exploiting the lag in your brain's update mechanism. The defining characteristic of an AI tool is its high-speed, frictionless prompt and response cycle. Because AI generates high-quality novelty at a velocity that outpaces the brain's ability to update its internal expected value, the actual reality variable remains a moving target, keeping the RPE calculation trapped in a positive state. This creates a physiological consequence, a relentless, overlapping barrage of mobilization signals sent straight to your prefrontal cortex before the system can recalibrate. Frictionless digital work traps your biology in a state of perpetual hyperarousal, burning through your metabolic budget at a highly accelerated rate. To survive mobilization, the brain relies on a biological counterforce, the opioid system. Looking at the timeline, the opioid system acts as a chemical stabilizer. It deploys as a cooling wave to return the body to a zero-state homeostasis after the challenge is resolved. The mechanical failure point lies in the cheap dopamine path of AI and digital algorithms. The technological feedback loop operates so rapidly that the chemical stabilizer simply does not have the physical time to deploy between tasks. Without that stabilizer, the system engages its last resort defense mechanism, dopaminergic vulnerability. To shield itself from the constant barrage, the brain artificially downregulates its own baseline, intentionally making all stimulation feel weaker. The physical experience of this downregulation is anhedonia. Environmental vibrancy fades out, and standard daily tasks suddenly feel impossible to initiate. Professional burnout is a mathematical symptom of complete stabilizer failure. Overcoming dopaminergic vulnerability requires a direct mathematical reset. The required control systems intervention is known as strategic friction. This involves intentionally designing physical and logistical barriers to forcefully interrupt high-frequency algorithmic loops. Creating physical distance from the stimulus forces the continuous RPE calculation to pause. Severing this automatic cognitive circuit allows the brain to stop bleeding energy into continuous expected value updates. Structural friction operates as an essential biological shield against metabolic drain. The sustainable alternative to frictionless digital stimulation is slow dopamine. These are structural tasks that demand a massive initial metabolic investment long before generating any positive prediction error. Activities like physical engineering, complex building, or mastering difficult tactical skills fit this profile. Because these high-friction tasks inherently unfold over extended timeframes, they allow the stabilizer wave to fully deploy upon completion. To execute a mathematical reset, the strictest parameter is a 60-minute daily zero-tech quarantine. This exact block of time starves the neural system of high-frequency inputs just long enough to force the RPE calculation to re-zero. As the baseline pulls out of negative territory, your natural thresholds for motivation return to optimal levels. In 2026, the primary differentiator isn't your access to digital tools, but your capacity to regulate the energy required to use them. Reset your baseline and prioritize structural building over chemical spikes.